Welcome, everyone. Before we dive in, be sure to drop your thoughts, feelings, and lessons in the comments below. Like the video and subscribe so you never miss stories like this. Let's get into it. The cruelest thing Brielle did wasn't even the cheating. It was how she screamed, "Get out," and threatened to call the police to say I was aggressive, then let another man wrap his arm around her like I was nothing, all while I stood in the home I was paying for. Here's how it happened. I'm Devin Harris, a black man in my early 30s, and this took place in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm writing it all down because the details keep replaying like a punishment. People say heartbreak fades, but some betrayals don't fade. They reshape you, slowly, until you don't recognize the person who once begged for basic respect. On paper, Brielle Washington and I look stable. 3 years together, a shared apartment near University Circle, steady jobs, weekend errands, birthdays with her family, and that easy we language people use when they feel secure. I work facilities for a hospital network. Early mornings, long shifts, always on call when something broke. Brielle worked in procurement for a logistics company in Independence, the kind of job that turned her phone into an extension of her hand. We weren't flashy, but we were building, or so I thought. I had a savings plan. I was talking about buying a house in a year or two. Brielle said she wanted the same. The first crack wasn't dramatic. It was quiet and easy to explain away. Brielle started treating my schedule like a character flaw instead of a job. If I got called in on a Sunday, she'd sigh like I chose it. If I fell asleep after a 12-hour shift, she'd say I didn't prioritize us. I tried to fix it. I brought home dinner, left notes, planned dates around my rotating schedule. I apologized too much, honestly, because I still believed love was mostly about effort. And Brielle loved effort when it was mine. When it was her turn, she called it pressure. Then came the new friends. Not one person, but a cluster of people Brielle started naming like they were a committee. Tasha from work, Janelle from her yoga studio in Shaker Heights, a couple of women she met at a networking event in downtown Cleveland. She started going out more, always for her mental health, always to decompress, always with the unspoken message that if I questioned anything, I was controlling. I wasn't the kind of man who policed a partner. I trusted her. I didn't want to become suspicious just because my life was busy. So I nodded, smiled, and kept showing up. Around that time, her language changed. It stopped being, "we should do this," and became, "I'm doing this." It sounds small, but it isn't. The future got rewritten in real time. She stopped talking about a house and started talking about not rushing life. She stopped talking about marriage and started joking about people who trap themselves. If I looked hurt, she would roll her eyes and say I was too sensitive. The worst part wasn't even the shift. It was how she made the shift my fault. She said I worked too much, that I wasn't present, that she felt alone. I started hearing rumors the way you hear thunder far away, soft at first and easy to ignore. A guy at my job asked if Brielle worked with that tall dude who's always around her. A cousin of hers made a comment at a family barbecue. Something about Brielle living her best life. When I asked Brielle directly, calm and respectful, she laughed in my face. "You're really going to listen to people?" she said. "That's embarrassing." She didn't reassure me. She punished me for asking. And like a fool, I accepted the punishment because I wanted peace more than truth. The first time she hinted at a new arrangement, I thought it was a joke. We were sitting on the couch one night, some show playing in the background, and she said, "Do you ever think monogamy is unrealistic?" I paused. I asked what she meant. Brielle shrugged, like it was a casual thought, then said, "Sometimes people need options." The word options landed like a slap. I told her I wasn't interested in an open relationship. I said I wanted one woman, one home, one future. Brielle smirked like I'd said something old-fashioned. "That's your insecurity talking," she said. "Not love." After that, arguments became routines. If I asked where she was, I was policing. If I asked why she was texting at midnight, I was paranoid. If I said I missed her, she said I was clingy. She learned how to flip every emotion into an accusation. And I learned how to shrink myself to keep the temperature down. I hated who I was becoming, quiet, cautious, always measuring my words. I was tired, not just from work, but from the constant pressure of proving I deserved basic decency in my own relationship. One Thursday, I came home early because a job got canceled. I stopped at a store in Parma and grabbed groceries, chicken, rice, vegetables, simple stuff. On a whim, I also stopped at a small jeweler near Beechwood Place. I didn't buy a ring. It wasn't that. It was a necklace, subtle, elegant, something I thought she'd wear on those days she wanted to feel special. I pictured her smile. I pictured the softening in her face. I pictured a calm night. That's what hope does. It paints over reality until you forget what you've been surviving. When I pulled into our lot, the lights were on. Music was playing, low, smooth, too relaxed for a random Thursday afternoon. I remember thinking maybe she took a half day. Maybe she was in a good mood. I walked up with grocery bags cutting into my hands, trying not to drop anything. I unlocked the door. As soon as I stepped inside, I smelled cologne, sharp, expensive, not mine. My chest tightened. The laugh I heard wasn't a friend laugh. It was intimate, the kind of laugh that assumes privacy. I rounded the corner into the living room and saw them. Brielle sat on the couch like she belonged there, legs tucked under her, hair done in a way she didn't do just because. A man I'd never seen in our home, Landon Price, was leaning close, his hand resting on her thigh like it had always been allowed. Their posture wasn't surprised. It was comfortable. And when Brielle looked at me, she didn't flinch. She didn't jump. She didn't look guilty. She looked irritated, as if I'd walked in at the wrong time like a delivery person. I didn't even speak at first. I just stood there, holding groceries, trying to understand what I was looking at. Landon's eyes swept over me with the calm confidence of someone who believes he's already won. Brielle's face hardened. "What are you doing here?" she snapped. The question didn't make sense, because it was my apartment too, my lease, my bills, my life. My voice came out rough. "I live here," I said. Brielle's eyes narrowed. "Not today, you don't," she replied, like she'd rehearsed it. That's when she screamed, "Get out!" It wasn't a raised voice. It was a full scream, sharp enough to make my ears ring. I froze. It felt unreal, like my body had missed a step and landed in someone else's nightmare. Landon stood up slowly, not panicked, not apologetic. He moved closer to Brielle and, in the most disrespectful motion I have ever seen in my life, put his arm around her shoulders and pulled her to him, possessive and casual, like a husband comforting a wife while a stranger causes trouble. I finally found words. "Brielle, what is this?" I asked, and my voice cracked because my body was still catching up to the betrayal. Brielle didn't answer the question. She went for control. "You're not going to stand here and start acting crazy," she said. "I'm serious, Devin. Leave. Now." I looked at Landon. He stared back like I didn't matter. Brielle pointed toward the door. "If you don't leave, I'll call the police," she said. "And I'll tell them you came in here aggressive." That threat changed everything. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't moving toward her. But I'm a black man, and she knew exactly what aggressive could mean in the mouth of a woman who wanted to win an argument. My stomach dropped. Brielle watched my face shift and leaned into it. "Go," she repeated, quieter now, almost satisfied. Landon's arm tightened around her like punctuation. In that moment, I realized she wasn't just cheating. She was willing to weaponize the world against me to protect the lie she was living. I set the grocery bags down carefully on the floor because my hand was shaking and I didn't trust myself not to drop them. I nodded once. I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't say anything that could be twisted. I stepped into the hallway like a man, leaving his own life behind. Behind me, Brielle locked the door fast, the sound clicking into place like a verdict. I stood there for a second staring at the door, waiting for reality to correct itself. It didn't. I sat in my car in the parking lot, staring at my steering wheel, breathing in shallow bursts. I called my best friend, Marcus Ellison, but it went to voicemail. I called my cousin in Columbus. I hung up before he answered because I couldn't form a sentence. Shame is heavy like that. I drove without thinking, ended up in a grocery store parking lot in Parma with my seat reclined, trying to sleep with my hands locked over my chest like I was holding myself together. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Landon's arm around her, like I was nobody. By morning, my phone buzzed with a text from Brielle. Not concern, not regret. A photo of black trash bags lined up on the porch. My clothes, my shoes, Random items shoved together like I was an unwanted tenant. Under the photo, she wrote, "Pick your stuff up when he isn't here. Don't start anything." Like I was the problem. My throat burned. I drove back and sat across the street from our building for almost an hour, waiting to see Landon leave. I felt like a stranger staking out my own home. When I finally walked up, the locks had been changed. I tried my key anyway, like a desperate reflex. It wouldn't turn. I knocked softly. Brielle cracked the door just enough to slip the trash bags out and push them with her foot. She didn't look at me. "You got everything," she said. "Don't come back." I tried to speak, but she cut me off. "If you come back, I'll call," she warned. Then she closed the door. That was it. 3 years reduced to a closed door and a threat. I carried my life to my trunk in trash bags. Plastic handles biting into my hands. Neighbors watched through blinds. No one asked if I was okay. No one stepped out. Cleveland is full of people who mind their business, even when someone's heart is breaking in front of them. I drove to work with my clothes smelling like cheap plastic and grief. I changed in the bathroom, splashed water on my face, and forced myself to look normal. That day, every beep of my phone felt like it might be the police calling because Brielle decided to finish the lie she started. I didn't tell my manager the truth at first. I said I had a situation. He looked at me with that polite sympathy people reserve for problems they don't want near them. I made mistakes at work because my mind kept snapping back to the living room scene. I kept seeing the necklace bag on my passenger seat, still unopened, like proof that I had walked into that day believing in something that never existed. When my shift ended, I sat in my car and cried until my chest hurt. I hadn't cried like that since my father passed. This was a different kind of loss, though, one that came with humiliation. Marcus finally called me back that night. I told him everything in pieces, like my mouth didn't want to confess what my eyes had seen. Marcus got quiet. Then he said, "Come to my place." But Marcus lived with his girlfriend and 2 kids in Euclid. I couldn't bring that chaos into their home, not without warning, not without pride getting in the way. I said no. Marcus argued. I still said no. I drove to a 24-hour laundromat and sat in the corner with my trash bags, pretending I was waiting on a load. I was really just trying to exist somewhere I didn't feel like a ghost. The next day, Brielle started rewriting the story. Mutual friends stopped responding to my messages. Her sister blocked me. A co-worker of hers I barely knew texted, "Leave her alone." I realized Brielle had already framed me as the unstable one. She was laying groundwork, making sure if I told the truth, people would call it drama. I wanted to scream. Instead, I got quiet. Because I understood something. The loud person controls the narrative, but the prepared person controls the outcome. And I had been too emotionally loyal to prepare for emotional cruelty. I looked up tenant rights in Ohio on my phone during my lunch break. My hands shook as I scrolled. I wasn't trying to get Brielle arrested or embarrassed. I wasn't trying to win. I just wanted stability and safety. I saw that changing locks on a co-tenant can be illegal. But I also saw how complicated it can get, how quickly it can turn into he said, she said, especially if she claimed fear. I decided I would not give her a chance to paint me as a threat. I would move like a man who understood risk. I would choose the kind of actions that leave a paper trail, not a bruise. I went to the leasing office in person in University Circle. I wore my cleanest shirt. I kept my voice steady. I told the manager, Denise Harlan, that I was a leaseholder and I'd been locked out and threatened with a false police report. I didn't rant. I didn't insult Brielle. I just stated facts and asked what the process was to remove myself from the lease at the earliest legal date. Denise's face tightened when she heard false police report. That was liability. That was serious. She asked if I had any evidence. I showed her Brielle's texts and the photo of my belongings outside. Denise documented the situation. She told me they couldn't mediate relationships, but they could note that I reported being locked out, and they could advise on lease changes with proper notice. I left that office feeling like I could finally breathe a little, not because I was healed, but because I wasn't helpless. Then I called the utility companies. Most accounts were in my name: electric, internet, renter's insurance. I changed every password, every security question, every recovery email. I froze the card Brielle had on file, not to punish her, but to stop funding my own disrespect. That night, I sat in my car again, outside a quiet park in Lakewood, staring at my bank app. Charges kept coming in: food delivery, streaming subscriptions, random purchases. Brielle was spending like nothing had changed, like my money was still a resource she could tap. I felt a hot surge of anger, then something colder: clarity. Love without respect is just a drain. I canceled the subscriptions. I shut down the autopays. I opened a new checking account with a different bank the next morning. I moved my direct deposit. I cut off access. Quietly. Cleanly. Without a fight she could record or twist. I found a month-to-month room for rent in Lakewood from an older woman named Mrs. Lorraine Parker, a black woman in her late 60s with kind eyes and a strict sense of boundaries. The room was small, but it was safe. She didn't ask invasive questions. She just said, pay on time, keep it clean, protect your peace. The first night, I slept in a real bed again. I woke up at 2 a.m. in a panic because I expected another text threat. My body had learned to anticipate danger. I stared at the ceiling and listened to the quiet. It felt unfamiliar, like silence had become something I had to relearn. Brielle never stopped. She didn't apologize. She didn't soften. She escalated in ways that were designed to keep me emotionally bleeding. She sent a message one evening: stop acting like a victim. Another day: you embarrass me by showing up. She told a mutual friend I was obsessed. She told someone else I couldn't handle the truth. Landon's presence became a weapon she used casually, mentioning him like a promotion. Landon understands me, she wrote once. He's not insecure. Every message felt like she was trying to make me smaller, so she could feel bigger. I started saving every text, screenshotting everything, uploading it to a folder with dates and notes, because I didn't trust how fast she could rewrite reality. At work, I kept my face neutral and my shoulders squared, but inside I was hollow. Food tasted like cardboard. Music annoyed me. I stopped going to the gym because I didn't want to be around people. I would sit in my car after work and watch families walk into restaurants, laughing, and I would feel like I'd been exiled from normal life. Brielle hadn't just taken a home. She had taken the part of me that believed stability was real. 2 weeks after I moved into Lorraine's room, I ran into Brielle's cousin at a gas station. He looked at me with a mixture of pity and judgment and said, "Man," she said, "you scared her." I felt my stomach flip. Did she? I asked. Or did she scare me? He didn't respond. He just shrugged and walked away. That was the moment I understood something painful. People don't always choose truth. They choose the story that cost them the least. Brielle's lie was convenient. Believing me would require them to admit they tolerated cruelty. Marcus Ellison started checking on me in a steady way. Short calls, quick texts, no heavy advice. You ate today? You good? Need anything? One evening he drove out to Lakewood and sat with me on the curb outside Lorraine's place. He didn't tell me to move on. He didn't minimize it. He listened. When I told him about the police threat, Marcus's jaw tightened. That's evil, he said simply. It was the first time anyone named it. Evil. Not messy. Not complicated. Evil. It helped me stop blaming myself for being wounded. I began to understand how Brielle had been moving long before that day. She had stopped investing in us months earlier. She had been shopping for an exit while still enjoying my stability. That thought didn't make me feel better. It made me feel used. I remembered all the nights I washed dishes alone while she scrolled, the weekends I covered bills while she said she was manifesting abundance, the times I swallowed my discomfort to keep peace. I saw myself in those memories like a man standing in the rain without realizing he's soaked, still insisting he's fine because he doesn't want to inconvenience anyone. I returned the necklace. The jeweler asked if everything was okay. I said yes and forced a smile. On the drive back, I had to pull over because my chest tightened and my vision blurred. I sat there gripping the steering wheel, thinking about how I had tried to love someone who treated love like leverage. I remember Brielle's face when she screamed, "Get out." Not angry, not hurt, but cold and sure. That wasn't a mistake. That was a decision. I finally let that settle. I wasn't grieving a relationship. I was grieving the illusion of one. Around week 3, I got an email from the leasing office, a notice about late payment. I wasn't responsible anymore, but my stomach still dropped when I saw the address. Old habits. Old fear. I opened it carefully. It was addressed to Brielle and other occupants. My name was not on it. Denise had processed the change. That was the first clean confirmation that my quiet moves mattered. I forwarded the email to myself and saved it. Then I took a slow breath. Brielle had chosen Landon. Now she would live with what that choice actually cost, without my money cushioning it. Karma didn't arrive like a movie. It arrived like a bill. Landon, as it turned out, wasn't a provider. He was a consumer. He enjoyed the apartment, the comfort, the image of taking another man's place. But he didn't carry weight. Brielle began posting vague complaints online about people who promise support but disappear. She tried to frame it as a romance problem. It wasn't. It was a character problem. She had built her life on shortcuts, on using people. And when one resource shut off, the whole structure started to wobble. She called me from an unknown number about a month after the lock change. The audacity of my own name on her lips again made my hands go numb. "Devin," she said, like we were still familiar. Her tone wasn't soft. It was irritated. "Why are the lights about to get cut off?" she demanded. I didn't answer. She pressed on. "This is childish. You know I have to work. I don't have time for your petty stuff." I stared at the wall in Lorraine's room, watching dust float in the sunlight, and felt something in me finally click into place. She missed my usefulness, not me. "You told me I don't live there," I said calmly. "So I'm not paying for it." Brielle scoffed. "You're really going to do this?" she snapped. In the background, I heard Landon's voice, close annoyed, saying, "Tell him to stop being dramatic." Dramatic. Like my forced eviction from my own home was a performance. Brielle's voice sharpened. "Fix it," she said, "or I'll make this a problem for you." There was again the threat. The idea that she could punish me for not funding her betrayal. I hung up without another word. After that call, I didn't feel powerful. I felt sad. Not because I wanted her back, but because it confirmed she would never see what she had done as wrong. Some people are allergic to accountability. They can destroy you and still feel entitled to your help afterward. I went for a walk around Lakewood Park that evening, the lake wind cold against my face. I watched the water and tried to let the anger move through me instead of living in me. I told myself out loud, I am not responsible for someone who chose to harm me. I repeated it until it sounded less like a hope and more like a rule. The next punch came from my own phone bill. Brielle still had her device tied to my account from when we first moved in together. I had overlooked it in the chaos. I discovered it when I saw a charge spike, international calls, add-ons, weird fees. I went to the provider store in person, changed everything, removed her line, and closed the account. The employee asked if I wanted to notify the other line. I said no, not because I was afraid of confrontation, but because I was done announcing my boundaries. I didn't want Brielle to feel like she still had access to my emotions. I wanted silence to be my message. At work, things slowly stabilized. I asked my manager for extra shifts. I volunteered for projects no one wanted. Not because I was trying to outrun pain, but because I needed structure. I needed proof that my life still belonged to me. I started doing something small every day that made my future sturdier. Updating my resume, clearing debt, cooking instead of buying fast food, going to the gym again, even when my chest felt heavy. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't post it. This wasn't a glow-up. It was survival with intention. Lorraine noticed my routines without prying. One night she knocked gently and handed me a plate, rice, greens, baked chicken. "You look like you're forgetting to eat," she said. I tried to refuse. She gave me a look that reminded me of my aunties growing up. "Eat," she repeated. I sat at the small desk in my room and ate slowly, surprised by how close I felt to tears over a simple plate of food. Betrayal makes you suspicious of kindness. Lorraine's steadiness began to reteach my nervous system that not every person in your life is trying to take something. Around month 2, Marcus told me he'd heard something through mutual circles. Brielle and Landon were fighting. Loud fighting. People were hearing it in the building. I didn't celebrate. I just listened. Marcus said Brielle had been posting about men who switch up. I almost laughed at the irony, but it wouldn't come out. I knew Brielle wouldn't frame her situation as consequences. She would frame it as betrayal. In her mind, other people are always the problem. That's why she could lock me out and still feel justified. That's why she could threaten my freedom and still call herself a victim. Then, one Tuesday morning, Denise from the leasing office emailed again. Notice posted. The words looked clinical, but my body understood the meaning instantly. Eviction. I opened the attachment with a steady hand. Brielle's name. Landon's name as an occupant. Past due amount. Deadline. Court date. My name was nowhere. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. The karma wasn't dramatic. It was administrative, but it was real. It was the law acknowledging what my heart already knew. They couldn't keep the life they stole without paying for it. Brielle called again that night, this time from her sister's number. You did this, she hissed the moment I answered, not even pretending to greet me. Her voice was sharp, furious, but not broken, not remorseful. You're trying to ruin my life because you couldn't handle me being happy. The accusation almost took my breath away. I realized she genuinely believed that my refusal to fund her was an attack, not a boundary. I thought about the trash bags on the porch, the change locks, the police threat, the arm around her shoulders. My voice came out steady. Brielle, you made your choices, I said. This is your life. Don't talk to me like I'm stupid, she snapped. I swear, Devin, you're going to regret this. Her sister's voice in the background said something about just let it go, but Brielle wouldn't. She wanted control more than stability. I imagined Landon behind her, bored, ready to leave the moment inconvenience got real. I didn't insult her. I didn't argue. I just said, do not call this number again, and hung up. Then I blocked her sister's number too, because I understood that Brielle would use any doorway available. I changed my phone number the next week. Clean cut. Quiet. 2 days later, Marcus texted me. They got put out. That sentence should have felt satisfying. It did, in a way that surprised me. Not like joy, but like my lungs finally had room. Not because I wanted Brielle homeless, but because I wanted the world to stop rewarding cruelty. I sat on my bed in Lorraine's room and let the relief move through me. I thought about that day on the couch, the disrespect, the certainty in their posture. And I realized something. They had mistaken my decency for weakness. They believed they could do anything and still land softly because I would always catch the fall. I didn't catch it, so they hit the ground. Brielle didn't disappear quietly. She tried to drag me back into the mess. She started emailing me from new accounts, sending paragraphs about how I was punishing her and acting like a child. She never apologized for threatening the police. She never acknowledged locking me out. She framed everything as me being bitter. She threatened to tell people the truth, as if her version of truth wasn't already a weapon. Landon never contacted me once, not to apologize, not to explain. Men like him don't apologize. They exit. That was his specialty, arriving where someone else built something, then leaving when the foundation cracked. The hardest part wasn't even Brielle's messages. It was the quiet moments when my mind searched for reasons, because my heart still couldn't accept how casually I'd been discarded. I would replay conversations from the past, looking for the turning point. The truth was uglier. There wasn't one turning point. There were dozens. I had ignored them because I loved the version of Brielle I thought existed. I had loved potential. I had loved memory. I had loved the idea of who she could be if she chose kindness. But she didn't choose it. She chose power. And power without love turns your home into a battlefield. I started seeing a therapist in Cleveland Heights, a black man named Dr. Harold Bennett, because I was tired of carrying my pain like a secret. Therapy didn't give me a speech. It gave me language. Dr. Bennett helped me name what happened: coercion, intimidation, emotional abuse, financial exploitation. When I called it by its real names, it stopped feeling like I was too sensitive. It started feeling like I had survived something. He taught me to watch my body, how it tightened when my phone buzzed, how my stomach dropped when I saw unknown numbers. Healing became less about getting over her and more about reclaiming my nervous system. I also learned to forgive myself for leaving quietly. Part of me had wanted to stay, to demand answers, to make them admit what they had done. But the truth is, if Brielle had called the police that day, I could have lost everything. My job, my record, my safety. Leaving wasn't weakness. It was strategy. It was self-preservation. That reframe changed me. It made me stop fantasizing about confrontation and start investing in stability. I didn't need Brielle to understand. I needed my future to be protected from her. Over the next months, I rebuilt my finances with a kind of focus I didn't know I had. I paid down debt. I increased my savings. I took an additional certification through my hospital network: maintenance management, compliance, project coordination. I didn't tell friends. I didn't update social media. I moved quietly like a man restoring a foundation after a storm. There were nights I still got hit with grief, nights I still felt worthless for a few minutes. But those moments became shorter. The pain didn't disappear. It stopped controlling the whole day. Lorraine became an unexpected anchor. Sometimes she'd ask, "How was work?" And I'd answer honestly without spilling everything. She'd nod and say, "Keep going." That's simple. No overanalysis. No judgment. One Sunday, she saw me staring at my phone after a spam call and said, "Some people try to haunt you because they can't stand that you're free." I looked at her, startled by how accurately she named it. Lorraine didn't know Brielle, but she knew patterns. She knew the kind of person who can't accept that they don't own you anymore. Around month 5, I found a one-bedroom in Shaker Heights. Not fancy, but clean, bright, secure. My name only, my account only. I signed a lease with a pen that didn't shake. When I carried my boxes in, the silence in the apartment felt different than the silence at Lorraine's. This silence felt like ownership, like a boundary made physical. I bought furniture slowly, nothing flashy. A couch, a bed, a small table. I hung one framed photo of my parents. I stood in my living room and realized no one could scream me out of this space. No one had keys but me. That was the beginning of peace. The first time I cooked dinner in my own kitchen again, I had to sit down afterward because my chest got tight. The memory of groceries on the floor and Brielle's scream rushed in. Trauma is like that. It attaches to ordinary acts and tries to poison them. I didn't let it. I washed my plate slowly and told myself, "This is mine." I learned to do that a lot. Name ownership over small things. My time, my bed, my money, my weekends, my calm. Brielle had taken the home, but she hadn't taken my ability to build another one. I stopped dating, not as a dramatic vow, but as a practical choice. I didn't trust my own radar yet. I needed time to recalibrate what I considered normal. Brielle had taught me to accept disrespect as a price of love. I wasn't going to carry that lesson into a new woman's life. Instead, I poured into routine. Gym in the morning, work, meal prep, therapy every other week, reading at night instead of doom scrolling. I didn't become a motivational poster. I became stable, quietly, and stability, I learned, is a form of success no one can fake. Brielle's karma didn't end with eviction. It kept unfolding because consequences don't stop just because you're angry about them. Her job started getting shaky. Not because I called anyone, I didn't, but because people who cut corners in relationships often cut corners everywhere. A mutual acquaintance told Marcus that Brielle had been flagged for policy issues at work, purchases that didn't line up, approvals that looked sloppy. I didn't celebrate that either. I just noted it. When someone lives without accountability, eventually the world forces it on them. Brielle had spent years dodging responsibility by blaming others. That strategy has an expiration date. One evening I walked out of my building and saw a car parked across the street that looked like hers. My body reacted before my mind did. Heart racing, shoulders tense. I froze. Then the driver stepped out. Not Brielle, just a woman in a similar car. I stood there breathing hard, embarrassed by my own fear. That's the part people don't talk about. Betrayal can turn your body into a smoke alarm that goes off too easily. Healing meant resetting that alarm. I went upstairs, sat on my couch, and did the breathing exercise Dr. Bennett taught me until my hands stopped trembling. A month later, Marcus called and said Brielle had been seen back in Columbus, staying with her sister. Landon was gone. No ring. No long-term commitment. Just absence. "She's telling people you ruined everything," Marcus said. I laughed once, short and bitter. "Of course she is," I replied. In her story, she is always the main character being attacked by villains. In reality, she is simply a person experiencing the predictable results of her decisions. I felt something surprising then, pity. Not enough to reach out, not enough to soften my boundaries, but enough to recognize how empty her life must be if she can't admit a single wrong. The final attempt came through email. Brielle wrote a long message about how we had been toxic and how both sides made mistakes. It was the closest she ever got to acknowledging harm, and even then she couldn't say sorry. She suggested we talk like adults, not because she missed me, but because she wanted access to the stability she had burned. She wrote, "I just need someone who understands me." I stared at the screen and felt anger rise, then settle into calm. I realized she didn't understand love. She understood extraction. I didn't reply. I archived the email. Silence was my answer. When I think back to that day in the living room, the image that used to crush me doesn't hold the same power. Landon's arm around Brielle used to feel like a public declaration that I wasn't enough. Now it feels like a symbol of something else, possession. Not love, not loyalty, just entitlement. He wanted what belonged to someone else because it made him feel powerful. Brielle wanted attention without responsibility, comfort without commitment. That combination always collapses because real life demands payments. Emotional, financial, moral. They didn't want to pay. They wanted someone else to. My comeback wasn't a confrontation. It was a quiet refusal to remain available for disrespect. I didn't humiliate Brielle. I didn't expose her online. I didn't rally people to my side. I did what she never expected. I took myself seriously. I protected my name, my finances, my peace. I let consequences do what they do when you step out of the way. That's a different kind of strength, one that doesn't need witnesses, one that doesn't need applause. It's the strength of a man who finally believes he deserves safety. Sometimes late at night, I still feel the echo of being forced out. The cold air in that hallway, the click of the lock, the weight of trash bags in my hands. Those memories are scars. They don't disappear. But scars also prove something. You live through what try to break you. I keep my apartment clean. I keep my accounts separate. I keep my circle small. I keep my boundaries firm. The person I am now would have recognized Brielle's early disrespect and addressed it immediately. I didn't have that wisdom then. I have it now. The most satisfying part of karma wasn't the eviction notice or Landon disappearing. It was the moment I realized Brielle no longer had access to my nervous system. One day, an unknown number called, and I didn't flinch. I let it go to voicemail and kept cooking. Another day, I saw a woman with the same hairstyle Brielle used to wear, and I didn't spiral. I just kept walking. Those moments sound small, but they aren't. They are freedom. Brielle wanted me to stay stuck, angry, begging, proving myself. I refused. I moved forward privately, the way real healing often happens, invisible to outsiders, obvious to the person living it. A year from that day, I got promoted at work into a supervisory role with better hours and better pay. I didn't announce it online. I didn't send a message to anyone from my past. I took Marcus out for dinner in downtown Cleveland and thanked him for answering calls when I didn't know how to speak. I thanked Lorraine for feeding me when my pride was starving me. I thanked Dr. Bennett for giving me language when my pain was mute. That's what my comeback looked like, gratitude and stability. Not revenge, not spectacle, just a life that fit me again. I still believe in love, but not in the way I used to. I don't believe love is proven by how much disrespect you can endure. I don't believe love requires you to shrink. I don't believe love should feel like walking on glass in your own home. If I ever share a space with someone again, it will be with a woman who sees partnership as mutual care, not a game of leverage. I learned that the hard way. Brielle taught me the lesson brutally, but she didn't get to keep the benefits of teaching it. I did. People ask sometimes, casually, what happened with you and Brielle? I used to stumble. I used to get embarrassed. Now I keep it simple. She wasn't who I thought she was, I say, and I'm glad I found out. I don't elaborate because my healing is entertainment. The truth is, if you've never been threatened with a false accusation by someone you loved, you don't understand how quickly love can turn into danger. You don't understand how fast your home can become foreign territory. I understand it now, and that understanding is part of my armor. The last time I heard about Brielle, it was through Marcus, and even he sounded tired of the updates. She's still blaming you, he said, still saying you were jealous. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. I wasn't surprised. Remorse requires humility. Brielle doesn't do humility. She does deflection. She does entitlement. She does rewriting history. And the world will keep responding to her the way it eventually responds to everyone who refuses accountability. Doors closing, opportunities shrinking, relationships deteriorating under the weight of constant blame. I used to want her to feel what I felt. I wanted her to understand the humiliation, the fear, the loneliness. I wanted her to replay my face in that hallway and feel something. Now I understand that some people don't have that kind of empathy. Wanting it from them is like begging a locked door to become a window. I don't need Brielle to understand. I needed myself to recover. I needed my life back. And I got it. Not all at once, not dramatically, but steadily through small choices repeated until they became a new foundation. If you're reading this and you've been forced out of your own home by someone who knows how to manipulate systems against you, I want you to hear this clearly. Your calm is not weakness. Your silence is not surrender. You do not have to perform pain for it to be real. Gather your facts. Protect your money. Protect your name. Let paper trails speak. Let boundaries do their work. Karma is often just reality catching up to the lies people live in. And the best comeback is building a life they can't access anymore. The truth is Brielle screaming, "Get out! Save me from years of slow erosion." If she had kept pretending, I might have stayed, trying harder, apologizing for her cruelty, funding my own disrespect. Her cruelty was sudden, but it was also clarifying. It showed me exactly what she was willing to do to keep control. It showed me what she would risk, my safety, my freedom, just to avoid consequences. I will never forget that. And I will never put myself in a position where someone can threaten me like that again. So yes, the story ends with karma, but not the kind people clap for. It ends with eviction papers, cut utilities, a man disappearing, and a woman still blaming everyone else. It ends with me in a quiet apartment in Shaker Heights, cooking dinner, paying my bills, sleeping without fear of a lock clicking behind me. It ends with private success, better work, better boundaries, a calmer nervous system, and a life that doesn't require me to beg for respect. Brielle wanted me to feel like nobody. Instead, she pushed me into becoming someone I can finally rely on, myself. If you enjoyed the story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.